The screen glared, a sterile blue rectangle spitting out two words I didn't understand. Account frozen. My thumb hovered over the tiny icon, frozen too, mirroring the digital death on the glass. The grocery store line blurred. The cheerful beep of the scanner faded into a low hum of dread in my ears. A voice behind me cleared its throat. Impatience. A child giggled somewhere, a sound utterly alien to the silent, roaring panic seizing my chest. Frozen. Not empty. Frozen. By who?
Why?
My breath hitched, sharp and sudden. The plastic card felt suddenly useless, a shard of worthless plastic in my trembling hand. This wasn't possible.
Not now.
Not ever. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Before the blue screen and the two words, there was us, or what I thought was us. A life built meticulously, brick by expensive brick. A house on a hill, overlooking the city lights that twinkled like scattered diamonds. Dinners where we discussed futures and dividends. Weekends spent sailing on water so blue it felt unreal. He was the architect of our financial world, the one who spoke the language of markets and mergers. I was the one who made the house a home, the one who curated the peace within the walls, the one who listened to his stresses and celebrated his wins. My role felt important, vital even. He said I was his rock, his sanctuary from the relentless grind. I believed him. I had my own small ventures, quiet investments he occasionally patted me on the head for, indulgently. Playing house money, sweetheart. He'd smile, a rich, condescending sound I hadn't realized was condescending until that moment in the grocery store line. My money was intertwined with his, or so I thought. Our accounts were joint. Our lives were joint. Or so I believed. The first call didn't connect. Straight to voicemail. The second. The third. Each unanswered ring a tiny hammer blow against the fragile structure of my reality. I left a text message, trying to keep the tremor out of my thumbs. My card isn't working. Call me? No reply. Hours stretched. The sun set outside the large windows of our silent house. The city lights began their nightly performance, mocking me with their distant glitter. He wasn't coming home. He wasn't answering. The house felt vast and empty, each expensive piece of furniture a silent witness to a lie I hadn't known I was living. I tried transferring money from savings. Frozen too. Every account with my name attached, a digital vault slammed shut. The message was clear, even without words. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. The next day was a blur of cold phone calls and colder conversations. The bank confirmed it. The accounts were frozen at his instruction. A legal hold. For what reason, they couldn't say. Data protection. My own money I had contributed to, earned, saved, was locked away from me. The house keys felt heavy in my pocket. Was I even allowed to be here? Every corner of the place that had been my sanctuary now felt like a gilded cage. I tried calling a lawyer, a friend of a friend. The consultation was short, sharp. Joint accounts can be frozen unilaterally if one party alleges certain things. It's a tactic. To gain leverage. He was using my financial lifeline as a weapon. To what end? To force me out? To control me? The fear that had been a cold knot in my stomach began to spread, a creeping ice through my veins. I had no access to cash, no credit cards that weren't linked. How long could I last? Days? A week? The silence from him was the loudest sound of all. Survival became a primal instinct. I ate canned soup I found in the back of the pantry. I walked everywhere. Every errand was a monumental task, requiring planning and ingenuity I hadn't needed in years. Friends offered help, hesitant loans, a couch to sleep on. Pride was a bitter pill, but necessity was a relentless driver. I took a small loan from a friend, enough to keep a low profile, to buy groceries that didn't require my frozen card, to put gas in the car. Just enough to breathe. But the constant anxiety was a physical weight. I felt hunted, cornered. Each time my phone rang, I braced myself. It wasn't him. Not yet. He was waiting, letting the pressure build, assuming I would crack, would call him, would beg. He underestimated me. He always had. He sent a message eventually. Not a call. A brief, sterile email from a burner address. Leaving town for a while. We'll discuss arrangements when I return. The accounts are secure for now. Don't try anything foolish arrangements.
Secure.
Don't try anything foolish. The sheer arrogance of it. He had dismantled my financial life and was telling me not to be foolish. Rage, hot and searing, replaced the cold fear for a moment. But rage was a luxury I couldn't afford. I needed to think, to survive, to fight back. But how? He controlled the money. He controlled the narrative he would eventually present. I was powerless, or so it seemed. Days bled into a week, then two. The small loan was dwindling. The isolation was crushing. I spent hours poring over old bank statements, tax documents, anything I could find that might give me a clue, an edge. It felt like sifting sand for gold. He was too smart, too meticulous. Every financial thread led back to him, to his control. I felt the despair deepen, a suffocating blanket pulling me under. Was this it? Was I going to lose everything? The house, my financial independence, the life I had helped build? Was I going to be reduced to a charity case, dependent on the kindness of others while he lived his life elsewhere, having cut me off like a dead branch? The thought was unbearable. Then, sifting through a box of old papers, something snagged my attention. A dusty folder, labeled simply Legacy. Inside were documents related to a series of early-stage investments I had made years ago, long before his business had scaled to its current height. Small amounts, seed money, placed almost on a whim based on intuition and connections he hadn't bothered to cultivate. One investment in particular stood out. A network of logistics and supply chain companies. Small players back then, but with a unique, interconnected structure. I'd put in a significant amount, money from an inheritance, money he dismissed as playing house money. I'd even helped broker some early partnerships for them, leveraging my own quiet network. Over the years, they had grown. Silently. Efficiently. He used these very companies now.
He relied on them.
But he didn't own them. Not directly.
And
I still did. A flicker of something cold and hard ignited in my chest. Not hope, not yet. Something colder. More calculated. I pulled the documents closer. My name was on the initial investment paperwork. There were agreements, quiet pacts made with the founders, promising anonymity and silent partnership in exchange for flexibility and long-term strategy input, away from the prying eyes of larger corporations.
I had insisted on it at the time.
He just shrugged. Too focused on his own deals to care about my little projects, he had no idea. No idea how crucial this network had become to his entire operation. No idea that my house money had built a quiet, powerful kingdom beneath his feet. The despair didn't vanish, but it was joined by a new, steely resolve. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I had a card to play. A hidden one. I began to work, not in a frantic panic, but with a quiet, focused intensity. I dusted off old contacts, made coded calls. I spoke in hypotheticals at first, testing the waters. The responses confirmed it. My position was solid. My control, though silent, was absolute. I could, with a few carefully chosen words, bring his supply chain to a screeching halt. His entire operation relied on the seamless, invisible flow of goods and materials facilitated by companies I majority-owned, companies whose founders were still loyal to the anonymous investor who had given them their start. The irony was breathtaking. He thought he had cut off my air supply, but I held the valve to his oxygen. The next few weeks were a strange duality. Publicly, I maintained the appearance of a woman struggling, isolated, financially ruined. I continued to borrow small amounts from understanding friends, played the part of the bewildered wife locked out of her life. He heard the reports, I'm sure. It fed his narrative, his sense of control. He thought he was winning. Privately, I was meticulously preparing. I contacted the network's executives, arranging meetings, laying out the situation not as a personal drama, but as a strategic threat to their stability posed by his actions. They listened. They understood. They were loyal to the structure we had built, a structure that valued discretion and long-term stability over his volatile, public-facing corporate world. They were ready. The day came. I chose it carefully. A Tuesday, middle of the week, peak operational time for his business.
No warnings. No ultimatums.
Just action. From a quiet cafe miles away, I made the calls. Short, precise conversations. It's time. That's all I needed to say to the key players in the network. The wheels began to turn. Quietly, at first. A delayed shipment here. A missed delivery there. Small, isolated incidents that wouldn't raise immediate alarm bells, but would create cumulative chaos. His system was built on tight schedules, just-in-time delivery. Delays ripple. They compound. They choke. My phone rang hours later. An unknown number. I let it ring. And ring. It stopped. Then rang again. And again. Persistence. Finally, I answered. His voice was tight, strained. What the hell is going on? Why are shipments being held up? The warehouse is empty. I remained silent, listening to the panic creeping into his tone. Is this you? Did you do something? His voice rose, disbelief warring with dawning horror. It can't be. You don't know anything about this. Don't I? My voice was calm, dangerously so. I pictured him in his opulent office, surrounded by the symbols of his power, watching his empire begin to falter because a few trucks weren't moving. You blocked my accounts. You tried to starve me out. You thought you had all the leverage. This is insane, he screamed, the careful facade cracking completely. You can't just shut down my suppliers.
How?
How are you doing this? Remember the legacy investment? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, but cutting through his noise like ice. The house money I was playing with? It built the network you rely on. The companies you use? I own them.
Silently.
Completely. The founders answer to me.
Not you.
You cut off my money. I cut off your bloodline. Silence on the other end. A long, stunned, horrible silence. The plot twist hit him like a physical blow. He had been so focused on the visible assets, the joint accounts, the house, that he had completely overlooked the invisible foundation, the quiet power I had built independently right under his nose. He thought he had left me with nothing. I had left him with an entire operation grinding to a halt, reliant on a network he had no control over. A network controlled by the woman he had tried to destroy. You bitch. The scream was raw, full of impotent fury. You can't. This will ruin me. That, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, is the point. I hung up. The silence that followed was different from the dread-filled silence of the past weeks. This silence was heavy with consequence, with the weight of a turning tide. His screams echoed in my mind, a satisfying counterpoint to the quiet hum of the cafe around me. He had used money to silence me, to control me. I had used a different kind of power, a silent, fundamental power, to dismantle him. The fallout was swift and brutal. His business operations seized up. Contracts were missed, penalties incurred. Clients became irate. The news started to filter out, whispers of supply chain collapse, of an unexplained crisis. He tried to rally, to find alternatives, but the network was too deeply integrated, too unique. He couldn't replicate it overnight. His empire, built on speed and efficiency, crumbled under the weight of immobility. For me, the aftermath was a strange mix of exhaustion and quiet vindication. There was no triumphant party, no grand announcement. Just the slow, steady process of reclaiming my life. With his operations crippled, his legal leverage vanished. The frozen accounts were released. I had not only survived but emerged with significant assets from the network, assets far exceeding what he had tried to take. The house was negotiated away, too many ghosts within its walls anyway. I rebuilt, piece by piece. Not the life I had before, but something new, something entirely mine. The scars remained, invisible but deep. The betrayal had changed me, hardening some parts, revealing a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. He had taught me a harsh lesson about trust, about power, and about the dangers of being underestimated. But I had taught him an even harsher one, that sometimes the quietest players hold the most crucial cards, and that house money can build an empire capable of bringing down another. I didn't just survive. I flourished, quietly, powerfully, on the ruins of the kingdom he thought he ruled alone. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.